Hi there, Dr. Avinash here, chapter number 32. That's what we are discussing today. And we are discussing antipsychotic drugs first, followed by anti-manic drugs. So, these are going to be drugs that have primary effect on the psyche. Psyche means the mental processes, and they are called as psychotropic drugs or psychopharmacological agents, and these are going to be used for treatment of psychiatric disorders. Okay. um, you can skip all this things that they have written here. They're not important from your exam perspective, but you need to know a little bit about what is a psychosis and what is a neurosis. A psychosis is a serious form of brain disorder, a severe psychiatric illness with distortion of thought, behavior, capacity to recognize reality, and of perception. So patients will have delusions and hallucination. Whatever happens in this patient's life, there is an inexplicable misperception and misevaluation. So the patient even can't meet the ordinary demands of life. What I'm trying to tell you is psychosis is really bad. There are many subtypes in psychosis. The first one is acute and chronic organic brain syndrome. People write it as OBS, organic brain syndrome. They include delirium and dementia. Okay, and you might be able to get some toxic or some pathological basis for this. Most people with OBS, organic brain syndrome, have confusion, disorientation, defective memory, and their thoughts and behaviors are disorganized. The second type is a functional disorder, where if you take the CT scan or an MRI or PET scan, not PET scan, see MRI, let's say, structurally everything would look normal. Okay, no underlying cause can be identified. The memory and the orientation are still retained, but emotions, thought, reasoning, behavior, they are all different, altered. This includes schizophrenia. This is often known as split mindedness. There is splitting of perception and interpretation from reality, which means they can understand certain things, they can't understand certain things, and that's the reason why they get hallucinations. They can't think coherently, and this, they are alert. Okay, intellect wise, they are there, it's not impaired, but because their ability to interpret is gone, hence things become wrong. A paranoid state is when somebody feels that the world is out there to kill them. This is a marked persecutory or other kinds of fixed delusion. They have false beliefs, and even when you explain to them that there are no great scientists, politicians, nobody wants to kill them, they lose insight into the abnormality. They can't even understand that they are wrong. A mood disorder, also known as affective disorder, is a primary symptom where there will be change in mood. This includes mania, which is excessively elated mood. The sleep is reduced, patient is hyperactive, uncontrolled thoughts and speech happen. And then there's depression, where there is sadness, loss of interest, loss of pleasure, worthlessness, guilt, physical and mental slowing, melancholia, and self-destructive ideation. And then we have something called as a bipolar disease, where patient alternates between mania and depression. Bipolar are of two more types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1, mania episodes only, or manic plus depressive phases, and type 2 is cycles of hypomania plus major depression. No frank mania happens. Compared to this, neuroses are less serious. The patient can at least comprehend his reality. That ability is not lost. patient is going to suffer, but still might just be able to go through his life. This includes anxiety, unpleasant emotional state, uneasiness, worry, tension, concern for future, phobic state, fear of some unknown things, known things for no specific reason, OCDs, obsessive compulsive disorders, where there is limited abnormality of thought or behavior. So there are recurrent intrusive thoughts or ritual like behaviors which the patient understands it's abnormal but or stupid, but he can't overcome those even with voluntary efforts. Okay, because of this there's anxiety and distress. When we have reactive depression, this is really because of physical illness or loss or blow to self-esteem or bereavement, but this is excessive or disproportionate. Like, yes, if somebody dies, you're supposed to feel depressed a little bit, but not for years together. Then that is something wrong. Then we have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. This happens after a traumatic event, wars, riots, earthquakes, rapes, murders, and it might not really even affect the person. Somebody else might, like, imagine somebody seeing a murder. That also can be a traumatic disorder, a post-traumatic. And hysterical is, this is a dramatic symptoms where there is severe physical illness but situation. Okay, the physical illness is not really serious, huh? It's all like resembling a serious illness, like somebody suddenly having an attack of syncope and crashing down, but this always happens when somebody else is there. Now please understand, the patient is not fiending. Okay, he or she is not doing this, they are not trying to cheat. They actually undergo the symptoms, but this is more like a psychic thing, not a physical thing. Now understanding these helps us understand that the psychotropic drugs can be grouped in 5 major categories: antipsychotics, that we are going to study in this chapter; anti-manic, which we are going to study in this chapter; antidepressants, which we study in the next one; anti-anxiety, which I think we have covered in another video; and psychomimetic, which we are not going to study because they are not used therapeutically, they are drugs. They are drugs of abuse. They are hallucinogen, psychedelic, psychodysliptic. Okay, so they are cannabis and LSD. We are not going to use them anymore. Let's talk about the antipsychotic drugs or neuroleptics. As the name says, they have effect on psychosis. Okay, this is how it all started: chlorpromazine, thioridazine, and trifluperazine. Do you need to know the chemical structure? Definitely no. Do you need to know the classification? Definitely yes. Okay, limited questions have come from this chapter. I'll give you a detail of all of these questions plus some additional ones that I think you should be doing, so that things are absolutely perfect with you. Okay, now what we are going to first discuss is chlorpromazine. This is the drug that is extremely important. Okay, and using chlorpromazine as a baseline drug, we will compare everything else to this. Okay, chlorpromazine. So let's start with the pharmacological actions of these medications, antipsychotic or neuroleptic medications. These we are going to describe of chlorpromazine. So CNS chlorpromazine action in non-psychotic individuals. When you give chlorpromazine, they have indifference to surrounding. Their thoughts stop, their psychomotor slowing, the emotions become quiet, right? And there is reduction in initiative and tendency to go off to sleep, from which the patient can be easily aroused. Simple. Indifference to surrounding, paucity of thoughts. Paucity means decrease. Psychomotor slowing, like even when you sit doing nothing, you're still doing something in your brain, right? Something's happening, you're thinking, feeling something. That goes away. Emotions quiet down. Initiative, like you want to do something, that's gone, and the patient might fall asleep easily but arousable. Spontaneous movements are minimized, but basically no slurring of speech, no ataxia, no motor incoordination. Okay. Now, as a normal human being, you want your thoughts to be there. These are perceived as unpleasant by most people, all these signs and the things that we discussed, and this is called as neuroleptic syndrome. Okay. Many of these drugs, the typical antipsychotics, typical means the one which we have used for generations now, they have potent dopamine D2 receptor blocking property. If you recall, dopamine is one of the most important neurotransmitter in the extrapyramidal motor system. If you block that, you will get extrapyramidal motor side effects, and they are called as neuroleptic drugs. Okay, these are neuroleptic drugs. In psychotic patients, though, chlorpromazine does something completely different. The irrational behavior, the agitation, the aggressiveness reduces. It controls all the psychotic symptomatology. The disturbed thoughts and behavior slowly and gradually become normal. The anxiety the patient is having is relieved. Hyperactivity, hallucination, delusions are suppressed. Okay, all of them, all these categories, phenothiazines, butyrophenones, and thioxanthines, they all have the same action, same efficacy. Okay, potency may differ. Okay, at the same dose, potency may differ. In general, aliphatic and piperidine side chain phenothiazines have lower potency, more sedation, and greater potentiation of any other drugs such as hypnotics or opioids. The sedative effect is prompt. Antipsychotic effect takes week. Good news, sedation develops to the tolerance develops to the sedative action, not to antipsychotic effect. So kind of different actions probably, because if it was the same kind of action, then tolerance would have developed to both these things. This is the reason why you have to tell the patient, especially the relatives, that the side effects are going to come first, the effect is going to come later. Okay, just persist. Just don't be like, oh, what doctor has given, the patient keeps on sleeping, the doctor is hopeless. You have to first tell the patient's relatives that I am giving a medicine whose effect comes later, the side effect comes first. The patient is going to be sedated for a few days. That's fine. Eventually the sedative action will go away, the antipsychotic action will start. Okay, it's not like the patient is going to become smarter. His performance and intelligence are unaffected. If he was smart before, he was performing good, intelligent before the psychotic episode, he will go back to that state. But vigilance is impaired. Plus, the extrapyramidal motor disturbance are prominent. Okay, they are linked to this antipsychotic effect. So, of course, these drugs are going to have some action on the dopamine D2 receptor, but more prominent actions in high potency compounds. Simple. It has no consistent effect on sleep architecture. So if there is a disturbed sleep architecture in a psychotic patient, it will just become normal. Now this is something that is very, very important. Chlorpromazine lowers the seizure threshold. Chlorpromazine lowers the seizure threshold, which means fits can be precipitated, especially in epileptics. Okay, the temperature control center is knocked off at a higher dose. So be careful, don't give too much, otherwise the patient will become from homeothermic animal to poikilothermic. So body temperature will fall if the surrounding is cool. Be careful. The respiratory centers, the medullary centers, the other vital centers are not affected except at very high dose. Very difficult to produce coma with overdose of these drugs. Okay. Phenothiazines and butyrophenones have potent anti-emetic action that's exerted to chemoreceptor trigger zone. That's the reason why when we will do GIT, we will talk about antiemetics, and then that we will be talking about neuroleptics. But trust me, there are so many better medicines for vomiting. You don't really give neuroleptics only to control vomiting. How does it happen? How does this action happen? Very simple. All psychotics have a potent dopamine D2 receptor blocking action. Okay, the better the D2 receptor blocking action, the better the antipsychotic. Okay, of course, there are dopamine D1, D2, D3, D4, four such receptors. Some of them, phenothiazines and thioxanthines, they can block D1, D3, and D4 receptors also, but that really does not translate to an antipsychotic action. It's the D2 receptor that is important, right? It is suggested that the dopaminergic neurons going to the temporal lobe, to the prefrontal areas, which constitute the limbic system, and the mesocortical area, the middle cortical part. When you block these dopamine projections, the psychotic actions go away. So the antipsychotic action is probably because of these, like blockade of dopaminergic projections in temporal and prefrontal areas, which constitute limbic system, plus in the mesocortical area. Okay, now we have also noticed the other way around. If you block dopamine receptors D2, antipsychotic effect is seen. If you increase dopamine activity, it induces or exacerbates schizophrenia. Clear? We have also realized dopamine receptor population is more in brains of untreated psychotics as compared to normal people. So this has led to a hypothesis called as dopamine hypothesis of schizophrenia. Dopamine is definitely overactive in limbic areas in these patients, which leads to these disorders. So when you block this, you will get anti-schizophrenia, antipsychotic action. The problem is dopamine is also necessary for your extrapyramidal actions, and when that goes away, you will also get Parkinsonian adverse effects. Okay. The reason why it takes time for these actions to come probably is because initially there is an adaptive increase in the firing of dopamine neurons and the dopamine turnover. You try to block something, the brain will try to do more of it, which then kind of gets tired, gets subdued, and a state of persistent inactivation starts if you continue the drug for long enough. And that's when the therapeutic effects come, but that's also when the side effects are going to start. Now, if that was really true that only dopamine causes psychotic behavior, then using these drugs, all psychotics would have been treated. But that's not the case. These medicines cannot effectively control all the signs and symptoms of psychosis. Why would that be? Because it is suggested that not only dopamine but serotonin and glutamate neurotransmitters may also be affected. Okay, now why do you think so? The LSD drug, lysergic acid diethylamide, that LSD drug is actually going to act on serotonin receptor, and with LSD you get all the hallucinations that a psychotic patient gets. So if LSD works on 5-HT2 and gets hallucinations, and a psychotic patient has hallucination, of course there must be some serotonin action in psychotic patients. That's the logic we are using. Okay, we have also noticed that if you decrease the dopamine in the prefrontal cortex, especially in cases of schizophrenia, there is cognitive impairment and negative symptoms. Dopamine in the prefrontal cortex is diminished in schizophrenia, which is related to something called as cognitive impairment and negative symptoms. The positive symptoms, hallucinations, aggression, these are considered positive symptoms. They are linked with dopamine overactivity, not the negative symptoms. The negative symptoms which I was talking here is apathy, cognitive deficit, social withdrawal. Others have found evidence of hypofunctioning of NMDA glutamate receptors in the brain. So basically we have evidence that NMDA glutamate is important. In some places dopamine deficiency is important for the negative symptoms, not just dopamine excess. So region wise different neurotransmitters must be important, and that's the reason why these drugs don't really kind of treat every single patient of psychosis. Neither does it reduce the dopaminergic transmission and serotoninergic transmission and other things. No, these drugs works on dopamine. There will be a limited action, but that is the major action. The minor actions are what I was discussing right now. Okay, now the dopamine hypothesis also fails to explain clozapine. Clozapine and other atypical antipsychotics have very weak D2 blocking actions. They have more alpha adrenergic blocking actions and serotonin blocking actions, and D4 receptor actions. Right? So how does a clozapine, which has weak D2 blocking action, still be an antipsychotic? Well, because these things also probably play a role. So this also proves that yes, it's not just D2 receptor, many other things have also an effect on this. Simple. The dopaminergic blockade in pituitary is important because pituitary in dopamine and pituitary works like prolactin inhibiting hormone. Dopamine and pituitary works like prolactin inhibiting hormone. You block the dopamine receptor, prolactin inhibiting hormone will not work. Too much of prolactin will be made, and that would mean patient will get hyperprolactinemia, and guys might even get gynecomastia because of this. Galactorrhea would be there, milk secretion might start, and chemoreceptor trigger zone dopamine blockade will cause antiemetic actions. Many of these neuroleptics have alpha adrenergic blocking actions, which is graded like this. Please remember, if you can, they have some anti-cholinergic property which goes like this, which means thioridazine blocks cholinergic transmission better as compared to chlorpromazine, which is better than triflupromazine, which is better than trifluoperazine, which is equal to haloperidol. They are also H1 antihistaminics. They are anti-5-HT. They are master. They are actually jack of all. Getting it? Some of these are potent local anesthetic, as potent as procaine. However, we don't use it because they are kind of irritant. Neuroleptics can produce hypotension. This is a postural hypotension by central as well as peripheral action. Okay, the action would be greater, this hypotensive action, if you give parenteral dose. And we have noticed that the higher the alpha block produced by neuroleptics, the more is the hypotension. Okay, now if a patient is psychotic, hypotension really is not that prominent in these patients, but if there is hypovolemia, then definitely hypotension will become more prominent. On chronic use, there is tolerance developing to this particular effect. At high doses of CPZ, there is depression of heart. It produces ECG changes such as QT prolongation and suppression of T wave. So it kind of has antiarrhythmic action, but as you might know by now, all antiarrhythmics can themselves cause arrhythmia. So in overdose, these drugs have the ability to cause arrhythmia. We have already spoken about endocrine action where prolactin is released, so there will be galactorrhea and gynecomastia. But apart from that, growth hormone, gonadotropin and ADH secretion is reduced, and ACTH response to stress is subdued. But clinically these are not significant action. Okay, These drugs have a potential to impair blood glucose tolerance and aggravate diabetes. So be careful. Simple. I think this is very easy. Once you understand which receptors it blocks, things just fall in place. The good thing is the sedative, the hypotensive action, tolerance develops to these actions within days or weeks. But maintenance dose for therapeutic effect in most psychotic remains unchanged over years. Slowly and gradually, the dopamine turnover increases in the brain, and yet the same dose keeps the patient in proper control. Okay, the antipsychotic actions, the extrapyramidal side effects, and other actions based on dopamine antagonism do not show any tolerance. Okay, can there be addiction to this drug? No chance. They are bland. When I say bland drugs, it means that they don't have any reinforcing effect. It's not like the patient takes the drug and goes, wow, I'm loving it. So there's no drug seeking behavior, no physical dependence. A little manifestation may happen on discontinuation. It can be considered as a withdrawal phenomena, but overall these drugs are pretty damn safe. As far as pharmacokinetics goes, please don't do this. It's not really going to come in your exam. Distinctive features of other antipsychotics, at least compare trifluperazine, haloperidol, and according to me, you should be doing, where is this? Yeah, levosulpiride. Just compare it, like just at the end of the chapter, once you're done with everything and you're confident with everything, please have a look at these 2-3 things that I've spoken. I hope you will get some pointers which will help you in your exam. Well, let's talk about the atypical or the second generation antipsychotics. Second generation because they are newer. These have weak D2 blocking action, but they have potent actions on serotonin 2 receptor. They block it. Now, because there's no D2 action or very little D2 action, the extrapyramidal side effects will be minimal. Right? And these atypical antipsychotics improve the impaired cognitive functions in psychotics without much side effect. Now, in this, there are quite a lot of drugs that have been mentioned. You have to do at least 2 of them. At least 2 of them. These 2 drugs are olanzapine and clozapine. Clozapine was the first atypical antipsychotic, completely different from, pharmacologically different from CPZ, because it had only weak D2 blocking action. So there will be no or few extrapyramidal side effects. Now when we do the chapter on Parkinson's, we will talk about a symptom called as tardive dyskinesia. It's going to be rare, prolactin level will not rise, but both positive and negative symptoms called schizophrenia are improved, and most effective drug in refractory schizophrenia. Patients not responding to typical neuroleptics are called as refractory schizophrenia. Okay. Probably it is relatively selective for D4 receptors plus 5-HT2 plus alpha block. Okay. It is sedating, potent anticholinergic, but surprisingly causes hypersalivation. Now this is very important. How? We don't know. It has histamine blocking property also. Okay. Now this paragraph, you don't really need to do a lot of things. Important points that you need to write in your exam is, it has a chance of causing agranulocytosis and other blood dyscrasias, and hence weekly monitoring of WBC count is required. Metabolic complications like weight gain, hyperlipidemia, and precipitation of diabetes is another limitation. and high dose can induce seizures even in non-epileptics. Okay. Apart from that, sedation, unstable blood pressure, a little tachycardia, a little urinary incontinence are potential side effects. Okay. Now, the worst was a few cases of myocarditis that were reported, which started like flu but went on right till death. So, because of all these risks, clozapine is now a reserved drug in refractory schizophrenia. The second drug I want you to do properly is olanzapine. This is again an atypical antipsychotic. It's like clozapine in blocking multiple monoaminergic transmission. So it's D2 receptor blocker, 5-HT2 receptor blocker, alpha-1, alpha-2 receptor blocker, but it is also muscarinic blocker and H1 receptor blocker. All symptoms, positive as well as negative symptoms of schizophrenia are improved. Okay, not just that, we have noticed that it affects something called a schizoaffective disorder. So this is much more broader term, like not just schizophrenia, everything that is like schizophrenia but it's not really schizophrenia. All of them are affected. Even mania is improved. Simple. Olanzapine has a potent anti-muscarinic action, right? That's what we said. It's a muscarinic blocking. So it produces dry mouth and constipation. It has weaker D2 blockade, so there will be fewer extrapyramidal side effects and there will be little rise in prolactin level, but it's more epileptogenic. It also causes weight gain, impairs blood glucose tolerance, worsens diabetes, elevates serum triglycerides, which are something that we are worried about, and hence many doctors, they don't really appreciate this drug. Stroke, risk of stroke increases. No agranulocytosis, but yeah, so remember this one. Now after you're done with these two, I recommend that at the end of this chapter, please have a look at ziprasidone, that's one, and maybe amisulpiride. You can have a look at it. Okay, things will be really easy. Now that we know how the drugs work and what they do, let's talk about the adverse effects. See, it's very safe drug. If you give it intermittently, infrequently, single, nothing will happen. Only when you give them on long-term basis, that's when you get some side effects. Now the side effects can be divided into two categories based on their pharmacological action. They are called as dose-related side effect, and then you have something called as hypersensitivity reaction. Let's do hypersensitivity reaction first because it's so damn easy. Cholestatic jaundice with portal infiltration. Okay, the portal tracts get filled with immune cells, and jaundice starts. This starts after 2 to 4 weeks of taking the medicines. Like after you start the therapy, stop the drug, it will resolve on its own. Next thing, skin rash, urticaria, contact dermatitis, and photosensitivity reactions. Agranulocytosis more with clozapine, not with any other drugs, and myocarditis and clozapine again, not with any other drugs. These are the more important hypersensitivity reactions, 4 of them. Let's go on to the drug action based the side effects. First and foremost, remember, drowsiness, lethargy, mental confusions. We already know this, right? Tolerance will develop. We already spoke about that. Weight gain is there. Why? Increased appetite. But we also spoke about increase in ability for seizures to happen. So write that. Simple. CVS, postural hypotension, palpitation, inhibition of ejaculation because of alpha receptor blockade, the QT prolongation we spoke about, right? Cardiac arrhythmias. Now you might be thinking, why inhibition of ejaculation is given in cardiovascular? Ejaculation and erections are vascular phenomena, not ejaculation. Erection definitely is. So yes, that's CVS actions for you. Anticholinergic effects, because some of these drugs are muscarinic receptor antagonist. Dry mouth, blurring of vision, constipation, urinary hesitancy in elderly males will be seen. Okay, but some, despite having anticholinergic property, maybe because of some central action, produce hypersalivation. Please don't forget clozapine. Clozapine causes hypersalivation. Hyperprolactinemia, lowering of gonadotropin levels, causing some side effects, but amenorrhea, infertility, galactorrhea, gynecomastia are infrequent complications. Okay, not everybody gets it. Metabolic effects, we have seen this. Blood sugar level rises, triglyceride level rises. Right now, we saw all these things. Okay, and these things will eventually lead to weight gain or cause insulin resistance, which smoothly brings us into extrapyramidal disturbances. Most of these drugs, not the atypical ones, the typical ones, they have prominent dopamine receptor 2 blocking properties. Dopamine receptor 2 is also a very important receptor, which when you block can also give extrapyramidal side effects, and extrapyramidal side effects such as rigidity, tremors, hypokinesia, mask-like face, shuffling gait. These all things fall under Parkinsonism category. Okay, you have to decrease the dose, otherwise these side effects will persist. If not, you will have to add an anticholinergic, anti-Parkinsonian drug. So it will balance out. Like dopamine is less, you decrease cholinergic system in the brain, and things might just balance out. They have tried changing antipsychotics, that also helps. Now, even though this combination seems logical, that start with an antipsychotic and also give anticholinergic, doctors don't do it because it tends to impair intellect, worsen memory. Plus, anticholinergics will cause dry mouth and urinary retention. Okay, you can't load this patient up with levodopa. See, levodopa will increase dopamine in the brain. If you are blocking the receptor, it doesn't matter how much dopamine is there, right? So levodopa does not solve the problems of Parkinsonism in this case. This is drug induced. A rare form would be perioral tremors, like the lips start trembling. This is called as rabbit syndrome. This happens after few years of therapy. This also responds to central anticholinergics. Acute muscular dystonia may happen. What is acute muscular dystonia? Bizarre muscle spasms, usually on the face and the tongue. So grimace, tongue thrusting is there. So the patient keeps on thrusting his tongue out of his mouth. It's like teasing someone. Torticollis, locked jaw. This can happen within few hours of a single dose or in the first week of therapy. If it does not happen, it will never happen. More common in children below 10 years and in girls, especially after parenteral administration. It lasts only for a few hours, resolves spontaneously. If necessary, you want to clear the reaction faster, add central anticholinergic or promethazine or hydroxyzine. Give IM, it clears this reaction within 10 to 15 minutes. The next is akathisia. Akathisia is restlessness, feeling of discomfort, apparent agitations, mental agitations which manifest as a compulsive desire to move, no anxiety is there. This starts between 1 to 8 weeks of therapy. Now understand, a person who is psychotic also keeps on moving. A person who has side effects of the drug, akathisia, also keeps on moving, right? You will never see a psychotic person sitting quietly in a corner. They will always keep on moving. This compulsive desire to move is important. Now, the difference is going to be that in psychotic patients, this compulsive desire to move will always be accompanied with anxiety, while akathisia is without anxiety. The patient's relative might tell you, doctor, you are giving a medicine and yet the patient is so agitated. You have to tell that this is a side effect. Okay, a central anticholinergic may reduce this intensity in some cases, but you use benzodiazepines such as clonazepam or diazepam as a treatment for this motor restlessness. Okay, if not, propranolol can be given. Otherwise, you just reduce the dose and be done with it, or you can change to a typical one. Then we have something called as malignant neuroleptic syndrome. This is rare. This happens with high dose of potent agents. The patient has rigidity, immobility, tremors, hyperthermia. The fever is very high. The patient becomes semi-conscious. The BP and the heart rate fluctuates. Myoglobin starts pouring out in the blood. This syndrome only lasts for 5 to 10 days, even after drug withdrawal, and this can be fatal. Okay, you have to stop this immediately and give symptomatic treatment. Okay, so probably it's the antidopaminergic action, but anticholinergics do not help. You give a muscle relaxant so that the patient is not having tremors. See, the reason why the patient has hyperthermia is because of tremors. The patient is shaking so badly that all his muscle fibers are undergoing friction, and that is producing that hyperthermia heat. So give dantrolene. Dantrolene will release the muscle, like relax the muscles, and the fever will go away and the patient will settle down. That can help. Bromocriptine can also be given in large doses. And last but not the least, there is a disorder called as side effect called as tardive dyskinesia. Happens pretty late, and this happens even after you withdraw the neuroleptic. This includes purposeless involuntary facial and limb movements, constant chewing, pouting, puffing of cheeks and lips, lip licking, or choreothetod movements, small movements of the hands, choreothetod movements. Okay, more common in elderly women. This is progressive neuronal degeneration plus supersensitivity to dopamine. If you try to give anticholinergics, the entire thing will get accentuated, and you can temporarily suppress it with high dose of neuroleptics, but don't do this. It's the neuroleptics which caused tardive dyskinesia, right? The reaction is uncommon with quite a lot of antipsychotics. You can try these medications. The dyskinesia may subside after withdrawal of therapy or maybe lifelong. As of now, we do not have any solution to this particular problem. And last but not the least, there are other side effects such as weight gain because of that sugar lipid rising. There is blue pigmentation of skin, exposed skin, cornea, lenticular opacities, corneal and lenticular opacities on the cornea, on the lens, and sometimes even retinal degeneration has been reported. Simple. So these are the side effects. See, if you don't write volume, like enough number of points in your exam, you don't score marks. So please write as much as we are discussing, at least that much. So where will we use them? Psychosis, right? So psychosis includes all these things, right? Schizophrenia, Gilles de la Tourette syndrome, bipolar disorder, acute mania, organic brain syndromes, these ones. We can also use them in anti-anxiety medication as an anti-emetic and others. So what I am going to do is going to start reverse. We'll start with other uses. We can potentiate hypnotics, analgesics and anesthetics at this point of time in our life. 2021, 22, trust me, the medicines that we have are so brilliant, they don't need any potentiation. Our hypnotics are great enough, our analgesics are strong enough, our anesthetics are perfect enough. So No need to do them now. Parenteral chlorpromazine can be given for intractable hiccups for no reason. In tetanus, it can be used as an alternative drug to relieve muscle spasm, and in alcoholic hallucinosis and in Huntington's disease, we can try these medications. More details about Huntington's disease and alcoholic hallucinations in medicine. Okay? As an antiemetic, they are pretty potent antiemetic. They can control many different types of vomiting because of drugs and diseases at doses much lower than those needed for psychosis. But then again, you should identify the cause of vomiting and try to remove that cause first. They are effective in morning sickness, that's vomiting in pregnancy, but don't use them for this condition. They are not important in motion sickness because dopaminergic pathway is not important in motion sickness. Okay. Now we have better 5-HT3 antagonist, other antiemetics are there. You don't use neuroleptics for controlling vomiting. Right? Using neuroleptics for controlling vomiting in today's scenario is like if you have mosquitoes in your house, you burn your house down. It makes no sense, right? Yeah. There are better antiemetics. Anti-anxiety, well, we have seen this topic in some other video, so have a look at it. Antipsychotics have some anti-anxiety action, but for simple anxiety they don't have to be used because these drugs will produce psychomotor slowing, emotional blunting, and autonomic and extrapyramidal side effects. That's not what we want. A patient who is already anxious, you're giving more side effects. In anxiety, benzodiazepines would work really good. But in other cases, like some other cases, you can try quetiapine, risperidone, olanzapine. They've been tried. They can be an adjunct to SSRI. Which brings me to the main topic, psychosis. The primary function of antipsychotics is, of course, functional psychosis. Okay. They have a definite therapeutic effect in all forms of schizophrenia. So they will produce good symptomatic relief. There is no difference between the typical and the atypical antipsychotic as far as positive symptoms are concerned, which means hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thought, restlessness, insomnia, anxiety, excessive fighting and aggression. These all will be easily controlled. Okay, but for the negative symptoms, apathy, not interested, loss of insight and volition, emotional blunting, not feeling happy, not feeling sad, that's emotional blunting, affective flattening, which means mask-like face, patient can't even express emotions, poverty of speech, does not talk too much, social withdrawal, all these things go away better with atypical ones than typical ones. So for positive symptoms, anything can do. For negative symptoms, atypical ones are better. Okay, all this affective is expression. Whatever your mental things are happening, you have a physical expression of that. You look at someone, you can understand the patient is sad, happy, right? That is affective actions. Motor disturbances, all this 90% patients, they get helped by these drugs and they will probably lead a near normal life in society. But intellect and cognitive behavior patterns are not benefited. Okay, some won't respond. None of the patient get 100% cured. Okay, these are symptomatic treatment. They do not remove the cause of illness, and hence long-term therapy is required. The judgment, memory, orientation marginally improve. Okay, a patient who starts the therapy earlier responds better as compared to patient who starts therapy later. The goal of our therapy is to relieve the symptoms and functionally rehabilitate the patient. Okay, now the drug choice is empirical. It's like the doctor can see the presenting symptoms, the features, the mood, and so on and so forth. But as far as in your exam, you will write in general, atypical antipsychotics are better tolerated and more commonly used now than the older typical ones. Every patient is unique, every patient is different. There is no way by which when you start the medicine, you are 100% sure it will work or not. Okay, but as a general rule, if the patient is agitated, combative and violent, haloperidol, quetiapine and CPZ work. If the patient is withdrawn, apathetic, try fluperazine, flufenazine, aripiprazole and ziprasidone will work. Patient with negative symptom, think clozapine plus its alternative. Patients with mood elevation or hypomania, haloperidol, flufenazine, quetiapine and olanzapine. If there is a risk of extrapyramidal side effects and you want to avoid these extrapyramidal side effects in tardive dyskinesia, thioridazine, clozapine or atypical antipsychotics. And elderly patients who we don't want them to sleep a lot, don't want mental confusion, don't want hypotension, high potency phenothiazine, haloperidol or aripiprazole can be used. That's it. This much you write, please. Giles de la Tourette, there was a movie about, I think if you are an Indian student who is a fan of Rani Mukherjee, the actress, she had a very recent movie called as Hitchki. In that movie, she suffers from this particular disease. There's, of course, an English version of that movie from which Hitchki was copied from. Giles de la Tourette is multiple motor or phonic tics. Okay, they are awkward or obscene, prevalent in children, and you have to treat symptomatically with behavioral therapy and training. Plus, add some typical antipsychotic drugs like haloperidol or pimozide. That's it, just write this much. In acute mania, antipsychotics can control the episode of acute mania faster. Okay, good news is even at high doses, manic patients tolerate them well. The drugs that we use are haloperidol or olanzapine IM. Beneficial effect will start in 1 to 3 days, and then you can start lithium or valproate. Simple. The combination therapy is much more effective as compared to only lithium. Write this much. For bipolar disorders, atypical antipsychotics alone or in combination with lithium or valproate can be used. See, same kind of management protocol. In organic brain syndromes, antipsychotics have limited efficacy. They can't really treat dementia and delirium, but they can be used in low doses on short-term basis. Okay. Use a potent drug to avoid mental confusion, hypotension and precipitation of seizure. Okay, that's it. Write this much and forget the general comments. You can read it once, but don't use this in your exam. So this is it for this particular video. We have finished successfully antipsychotic medications. In the next video, we are going to talk about lithium carbonate or drugs for mania and bipolar disorder. Till the next time we meet, this is Dr. Avinash signing off. Please finish this and let me know if you have any doubt. Take care, keep studying and keep rocking. Bye bye.